Well, I'd just like to say a few things before our keynote speaker gets started. I really want to thank the entire student body and most importantly, the Black Student Union for putting on an incredible last few weeks. I've been really thrilled with the participation and the growing club and really hoping that it will be the beginning of a legacy for years to come on how we can really ensure equity and inclusion at Berkeley City College. I'm Debbie Budd, the president of Berkeley City College, and none of this would be possible not only without the work of the students, but without the work of some really dedicated staff. You know, Victor Flint has helped chair the BSU and done incredible work. Ramona Butler has been very involved in helping with the club and sending out, you know, daily events, but really each and every one of you. And we're really hopeful that, you know, the rest of this semester will be a success for you, and that whether you come back next term to continue your classes or you move on to an improved career or four-year university, that you always feel you can come back to Berkeley City College and share with us and be a peer mentor for your fellow students. So thanks a lot, and thank you again, Vivian and the entire club, for all of your great work. Thank you.
Hi everyone, again I'm Brianna Rogers, and I am actually going to pass the mic back to Vivian so that we can introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Activist, writer, singer, and former leader of the Black Panther Party, author of A Taste of Power and the Condemnation of Little B, a mother and powerful Black woman, and someone that don't take shit from nobody. Please stand for Miss Elaine Brown.
So I want to start out by saying thank you, and start with this phrase that we use in the Black Panther Party, and that is power to the people, because that's what we're aiming for. At least that's what some of us are aiming for, which is power to the people, meaning that the people should be in control of our lives, our destinies, and the resources that affect our lives. We all talked recently about the 1% and the 99%, so we know that most of us are not really in control of very much that affects our lives. I'd like to tell Black people especially that if they cut off these cell phones, you won't know anything about the satellite. You barely know about the little shell, and you figure you didn't pay your bill. You don't even know who you're paying your bill to, because you don't know who are these people that exist in the ether world. So we're really not in a position of power, the majority of us. I'm not, want to quote Jesse Jackson, but I'm gonna quote him today. He said recently at a forum that we were both at that one of there was something worse than slavery, and that is to adjust to slavery. And that's what we've done in this country. We're pretty happy getting crumbs and pretty happy with the status quo, and we're like a little bit upset. I mean, I couldn't believe I saw that silly comment up there on TV talking about how comparing the struggle of Black people in America for freedom to these silly French reactionary newspaper trying to blame Muslims for all the things in the world and being so offensive to everyone in the world with their violent words, and then having the nerve to compare that to the people in Hong Kong, so-called democracy movement, which all of this stuff is questionable to me as to where the origins of it are. You know, it's like the so-called Arab Spring and all that. But the point is, the conversation I like to have is, I use Dr. King's phrase, and I was recently asked, well, this is really interesting that a former Black Panther would be quoting Dr. King as though there was some sort of a dichotomy. King was this non-violent guy, and the Black Panthers were these violent people. There's no study, there's no analysis, and we haven't learned very much. Dr. King was a revolutionary. It's just that everybody in America that wants to talk about him has the airwaves that owns the airwaves has made him into a two-dimensional caricature who only believed in non-violence, whatever. And the last thing we really remember was he was talking about walking up the mountain in 1963, holding hands. We don't know what the dream was. We don't even know who Dr. King was. And we certainly don't know it from this film, Selma. So in any case, I don't want to go off onto Oprah, because then that'll be another conversation. But in any case, so the question we have to ask ourselves today, right now, when we talk about Black Lives Matter and some of these other slogans that we bandy about very easily, but we're really not doing very much other than sloganeering and protesting. I know some young people are angry with me right now because I say that, and they're like, well, we're really trying hard, and I don't know what you're trying hard to do. And I don't know that you're really trying hard. But the point is, where do we go from here, but where do we want to go? What kind of a society? So I'm using the measure of black people in America to indicate the status of black people is a strong indicator of the status of the rest of us. So I'm going to talk a bit about black people. This is Black History Month. I see you got the red, black, and green out. So where are we now? We're still 25% of America's poor when we represent 13% of the population. We still have the lowest education levels, the highest unemployment levels. We still are have the highest rates of cancer deaths. Prostate cancer deaths for black men is the highest rate in the world. And then you have black women still dying of maternal mortality rates 4 times higher than white women. I don't even know how can we be in a country, the United States of America, with all of this medical ability, and we have women dying from childbirth. I don't understand how that's possible. So, but we also have 50% of the prisoning population in America. Now, some people argue with me and say, well, 50% is really like 47.2 or something. Whatever, I'm going up to 50%. It's 50%, and we represent 13%. So we could ask the question, why? And I've asked people that. I've asked black people, well, why do you think that is, that we're 50% of the prison population? And I get answers like, I don't know. I don't know why we're 50% of the prison population. And then there are the other end of things. You have the sort of hardcore right-wing racists who will actually start having things where they say, well, is there a genetic connection? Maybe there's a criminal gene, and they actually start having studies. Columbia University actually had a study about whether or not there was a criminal gene, particularly among black and Puerto Ricans, and they studied young boys who had older brothers in prison and gave them some kind of strange drugs. And this I'm not making up, This you can look it up, the study on the criminal genes, the potential criminal gene. Of course, this is a stupid statement because we know that crime is political, right? And why do we say crime is political? Because you can go and kill everybody in Afghanistan, they're gonna make a movie about you called American Sniper, right? So we're gonna celebrate killing, right? So we know killing is not a crime. That's only a crime if I say so, and I'm the one holding the gun, so I'm the one that defines the universe of what is a crime, right? Killing a black woman at Home Depot, murdering her down with no guns, 2 cops, 2 Emeryville pigs killing this poor woman over stealing something out of Home Depot. Really? Was that the death penalty? Home Depot, stealing something from Home Depot has a death penalty attached to it. And so we know that killing is not a crime, is it? So when we say that there's a criminal, the idea that there's some kind of innate criminality, we know that can't be possible because crime is political in the first place. But the other part of it is we have to either ask ourselves, is this current status of blacks in general, and I'm not speaking of those of us who can get by today because we got a credit card or some kind of, we paying a car note in front and stunting like I am most of the time, trying to look good, passing for somebody that got something, so I can get to the next thing. Those of you who don't know how to hustle, that's what you do when you want to hustle. You got your hustle, I have mine. But anyway, so we know that if we talk about crime as political, when we look at the status of black people as a group in America today, then we have to ask the question, why are we remaining in an oppressed state? And we are oppressed. Less than 1% of all revenues from businesses in America come from black businesses. We don't own anything. We don't make anything. We're a consumer base, and that's just about it, really. Hoping we can get a job on the plantation, We can get into that in a minute. So why are we like this? Why is this? People say, the Vietnamese come here and they do well. People even say the Nigerians come here and they do well. What's wrong with black people in America There's opportunity here. This is the neoliberal agenda set forth by people like Bill Clinton. There's nothing wrong with America. You got your civil rights and your voting rights act. There's something wrong with you. Opportunity is here. I always say, well, if that's true, then how many people want to be millionaires and how many are? You know what I'm saying? So obviously you're not working hard, or as Oprah said, I believe in God, I have my faith, and I work hard. You know, so if you, obviously the rest of us are some lazy atheists, right? So what we have to ask ourselves is, how did this happen? So what I like to talk about in Black History Month, or really all year round, as the sister said earlier, is the history of black people, which is written out of the script of American history. You know, we still love Thomas Jefferson, slaveholder and rapist though he was. That gets people nervous to say rapist. Bad enough he said slaveholder, don't say rapist. They had a love affair, he and Sally Hemings. She was 14 years old when she had his first baby. And she was his slave and also the half-sister of his dead wife, which is just a footnote in history that we erased completely. So how did we get here? And I need to just run this very quickly so we can get back to where we want to be and what we did as the Black Panther Party, and then you can, ask questions about it. And the quick story is, the first point is, we didn't come here looking for a better life or religious freedom. As Malcolm X said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock landed on us, So we didn't come here for a better life, and neither did the English. When the London Company came to Jamestown, they were coming for money and gold, and unfortunately the native people were here, and they just decided they would just wipe them out. All 30 tribes of the Powhatan Confederacy, blood of the native people running all over this country. We just built freeways and everything, all of us walking on the blood of the native people, right? So that's the founding of America, That's Jamestown, after King James, the same guy whose Bible is named for, that most people, that version of the Bible is read. So here they come, and so we come in around 16-something, that is to say the African population that was dragged kicking and screaming from the continent, mostly young boys, around somewhere between 16 and 25. Wait a minute, doesn't that sound like the prison population today? Mostly young, because you needed people to grow all that food that the English didn't know how to grow, too lazy, simple-minded, and backwards to grow. That's why they ate each other until they finally killed the Indians and then took the land. Well, these are facts of life. Go read Howard Zinn's documents in the People's History of the United States. Don't read the history books you've been reading all along. Read about how people ate each other. This was barbaric stuff that went on in this country for the founding of Jamestown, the first English colony. By the time we get to 1776, with the founding of the United States of America, the 13 colonies forming a nation, you have South Carolina rice growers, who are the richest men in the world, and you have Georgia cotton growers, who are right behind them. They're up with the kings and queens of England and Europe at this point. And how did they get that money? Well, we all know, because they built up their agricultural base with on the backs of slaves. And I'm not going to get into the slave institution and all the horrors of slavery, because those are pretty well known, and I want to just move the point. But the bottom line is, not only were blacks and Africans divested of our names, of our country, of our families, our language, our history, we were erased as a people completely, and not even embraced as a new people, because there was no way out of slavery. Matter of fact, a runaway slave faced the death penalty on the spot, unless they could find where to take you back to. Then you just took a whipping. There was no getting married. There was no owning anything. There was no belonging to yourself. I'm mad today because I don't know where I'm from. I always say, I get Eritreans and Ethiopians saying, you look like you, or Yemen, somebody from Yemen. I said, that's right, I'm going with that, That's right, I'm from the continent, Wherever it is, that's where I'm from. Don't know, because like most Africans lost in America, we don't have our names and our language and our religions and we don't even know where we're from. We can't go back and find that, no matter what they say about, you remember the old DNA swab test they had going, everybody was buying into that, paying $100 to have somebody say, oh yeah, you from the village in Hoobie, you don't know. Yeah, Alex Haley was like, that's right, I'm from the Gambia. The Gambians were like, yeah, come on home, brother. So as the country became a country instead of a company called the London Company and evolved into a country, and kind of it's that way now, isn't it? Is it a company or is it a country? Is it a corporation that runs America, or is it America running the corporation? It's kind of blended the way it was with the London Company in the United States of America. But anyway, that's why I tell people, when I see the American flag, I always say, well, this is the flag of a slaveholding nation. Because every single colony agreed with slavery, right? And all the signers, just about all, and somebody says, oh, there's one exception. He didn't have slaves. Everybody else was a slaveholder. So they had an interest in continuing slavery, even though they formed a perfect union among themselves and a handshake among white landed European men. That was their handshake, but it had nothing to do with the rest of us, and particularly black people. Thomas Jefferson even says in Notes on the State of Virginia, well, we could say that all men were created equal, but that really didn't mean the black, he says in Notes on the State of Virginia. That didn't mean the black because there's a difference. It's like their skin, that immovable veil of black. It's not beautiful like the admixture of white and red among the white race. And their hair is not long and flowing like our hair, and their bodies tend to have a terrible odor, a disagreeable odor, he says, in Notes on the State of Virginia. And they are lazy, and they lust after their women. They have no love in them. Matter of fact, they have no art or literature or music in them. And I, Thomas Jefferson, advances, therefore, that the black is inferior to the white in the endowments of both body and mind. We can't include him in this experiment about the equality among all men. They're not like all men. So that's why I have to keep my slaves, build up Monticello and make a lot of money and so forth. And the country goes forward until, of course, the invention of the steam engine starts encouraging people to think about a new economic reality, and that is, of course, the rise of industrialization. And Lincoln was deeply involved in that as a lawyer for the railroads, and so he called for a new paradigm, the expansion of the country west, and cutting out slavery so more white people could have jobs, and industrial age would rise on the labor of whites and not on free black labor, because Lincoln tells us, I, like any man, believe in the superiority of the white race. So he issues, the war starts, South Carolina and all these states secede and form the Confederacy. And then Lincoln says, well, we're just going to take them out in 1 minute. But as it turns out, the South was much stronger than he thought. And by 1863, South is winning. Lincoln says, we got to do something. So I'm going to, as a, quote, necessary war measure, I'm going to free the slaves in the seceding states. Now, if you stay with the Union, you can go on and keep your slaves. But if you want to separate from us, I'm going to say that. Of course, he had no real authority, but the slaves didn't get it because they left all the plantations in droves and thousands and started following when the tide of war started changing, when the base of labor was lost to the South. And then by that time, Sherman was able to burn Atlanta, march to the sea in Savannah, and take all these thousands and thousands of black people with him. Of course, we weren't able to join the Union Army because they were actually didn't allow us to do that, despite Harriet Tubman and all that other stuff. Bottom line is, Sherman says, well, look, what are we going to do with these 4 million former slaves? He said, we got to give them somewhere to start over in this country. I'm not an abolitionist, I don't care nothing about it, but I'm not going to have 4 million people that used to be slaves just wandering around wildly. Give each one of these families 40 acres of land. You know we're still looking for that, right? We're still looking for, some of us looking for a mule. And so when Sherman said that, people started grabbing up land, got their little certificates. I lived in Georgia. I don't know how many of you ever lived in Georgia or in the South and have seen people that have their little certificates with their 40 acres. And they actually have some land still in little spots like this. So Sherman issues this order, but then the new president, after Lincoln got killed, the new president, Andrew Johnson, says, look, I'm not going to we're going to reconstruct the South, but I'm not giving these people, these good white people's land. We're going to return these lands to everybody. This is illegal, and I will drive them out with the United States Army, and that's what happened. And after that, it was a wash. We never did get any opportunity to talk about land anymore or anything else, right? We started talking about just getting a seat on a train like the Plessy case, right? Plessy versus Ferguson, all of you should know about, right? You know, Plessy was an octoroon. You know, don't you love that? He claimed to have 1/8 black blood. So his theory was I should be able to sit on the train car where white people, because the cars were segregated in New Orleans, because I'm mostly white. So ultimately the Supreme Court says, Plessy, we're declaring you black. Do you have another point to make? And Plessy said, well, I paid the same price, so I should be able to sit in the same type of car. And the court said, we cannot bring black and white people together. These white people used to you being slaves. This is offensive. It's too difficult. But as long, and so if there are going to be, if they will have equal accommodations, we will allow them to be separate. Separate but equal, right? And that's what happened. And some people thought that was a good idea, except they realized that we didn't have a train. And we don't have a hospital. And we don't have anything. So we had to keep finding ways to get into their trains and onto their trains and into their, and so we spent the next 60 years just trying to survive the rule of Plessy, which was Jim Crow, right? Just trying to survive Plessy. And how do we do it? Booker T. Washington said, well, I'm not going to try to integrate into your society. I need some money. Give me some money. I'm going to build what I got right here at Tuskegee. Following him was, of course, Marcus Garvey and the United Negro Improvement Association said we need an independent economy, along with ultimately Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. You had the NAACP at the same time saying we need to integrate, we need to find our way into this society. We are opposed to lynching. We're going to oppose work and having no jobs, and we're going to have strikes where we're going to say we're not going to shop or we can't work. Not that we can shop in most of these places and we had any money. So we fought. We fought against lynching. We fought against all the horrible things that were happening for us to just survive, for food and clothing, just basic necessities. And we wandered around for a long time, and then we started seeing maybe freedom could come through education. And we have little Linda Brown's family trying to get her an education by going to a better school, a white school. And we have the Brown v. Board of Education decision. And the blood that was shed trying to enforce it still hasn't been enforced. When people tell you black people don't care about education, they must have forgotten the blood that was shed over the Brown decision. And then by 1955, we got Rosa Parks doing what Plessy did and what Ida B. Wells Barnett did, trying to get a seat on the bus. Don't own the bus. Don't even have a car. That's why you got to get on the bus. I paid my fare. I need to sit on the bus. And the great voice of Martin Luther King rises up in that period. And television broadcasts that stuff all over the world. And now the world knows that America is really not the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's the land of racism, segregation, oppression, and murder and other things that have happened to keep black people and other people of color and poor people completely oppressed while a certain group of people rise. So that shocked the world. The world was like, what? How's America going to criticize us when you walking around here, people can't even vote, can't even get a ride on the bus? And so you have that movement. We never called it the civil rights movement. We called it the freedom movement. Oh, freedom over me, and before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. Nobody said civil rights because we were looking for freedom, not civil rights. Now, some of us are still looking for freedom, and some of us are just looking for a piece of the pie, right? We just want a spot in the plantation, be a good soldier somewhere. So King goes forward, and he becomes the moral voice of a movement that galvanizes millions of people, not only in this country, but around the world. And of course, ultimately was able to push through because of that movement, this notion that Lyndon Johnson, who clearly killed King, oh, I know there's going to be some, Negroes love Lyndon Johnson. They like Lyndon Johnson was like Bill Clinton, the pre-black first president or something. So Lyndon Johnson, you did notice that King, the two Kennedys and King get killed in similar fashion while Lyndon Johnson is around, and then that stops after he leaves office. Nobody knows that. But anyway, so the one guy that got the lucky shot and nobody knew and he was alone. So Johnson pushes through because of King's marches and because of the movement that was taking place, 64 Civil Rights Act and 65 Voting Rights Act. And so ultimately, black people can now drink out of the water fountains where white people drink, and we can use the public toilets, the same public toilets as white people, and that's just about all we got from the Civil Rights Act. And the Voting Rights Act, I'm not sure what we got from that. Somebody can argue with me about it, but anyway, right now. So that's where we were, and at that point, the Black Panther Party comes on the scene in 1966 and says, we want freedom. That's the first goal of the Black Panther Party. We want freedom because we recognize we were not free and that we were oppressed. Now, when Bill Clinton in 1993 made a speech in the same church where, is that minutes or seconds? When Bill Clinton made a speech in 1993 about standing in the same pulpit where Martin Luther King had given his last great speech, he said, if Martin Luther King were alive today, standing by my side, what would he say? And of course, this is impossible to imagine that Martin Luther King would be standing by the side of Bill Clinton, a Little Rock racist that at the time was probably spitting on some of those little children trying to desegregate schools. But anyway, I digress. So here's Bill Clinton standing there talking about what Martin would say. He would say, I died for your freedom, but look what you've done with it. All this black on black crime, all this unwed mothers and all the breakdown of the black family, and all the black people in the audience hung their heads. He said, you right, Master Clinton, we done messed up freedom. When the Black Panther Party started in 1966, we said we wanted freedom because we knew we were oppressed, and one of the other reasons we could tell is because Dr. King was talking about freedom. So we knew in 66 we weren't free. So we said, I want freedom. And by the time King was killed, when I joined the Black Panther Party, I thought we were fighting for freedom. So I didn't know when we got free between 66 and 68. And from the whole next 10 years, I spent thinking I was fighting for freedom, and the rest of us did. So I'm trying to figure out what happened to that moment when we messed up our freedom with this black on black crime and with this unwed teen mothers and with this breakdown of the black family. I know you broke down the black family back in the 1600s when you dragged us away from our homeland. I know that happened. But what I want to get to is something about the Black Panther Party very quickly. So we said we want freedom, and we had a 10-point platform and program. And we said, how can we be free? What are the things that we have to do to be free? In a country where this is the empire. This is the country that's controlling the economy and has the biggest army and the greatest arms in the world. How can we challenge this, and what do we do? And we said, well, we have to come up with strategies for organizing. We decided that we could not become nationalists because there was not going to be a nation within a nation. And that even though it was our subjective goal, the interests of black people and black freedom and liberation, we had to recognize what were the concrete conditions that we had to deal with. And in doing that, we became Marxist-Leninists. Although somebody said to me, well, Marx was white, and Lenin was like, well, sit down, okay? So we were communists with a small c, followed everything we could follow from Nkrumah to Mao to try to figure out ways in which we could adapt. But we knew one thing, we could not keep the present system in place because it was that system that had enslaved and oppressed us. So why would we think we could suddenly be free under a system that had oppressed us? And how could we talk about the freedom of black people isolated from the freedom of others? Would we be all right with being free when the native people were oppressed? We said no. So we helped to formed a coalition with AIM, American Indian Movement. And what about the Chicanos, as we called Hispanics, were called Mexicans, were called back in the day. Some people oppose that language today, but the Brown Berets didn't. And so we said, well, how can we talk about the freedom of black people in the face of the oppression of Mexicans and Latinos in California, for example? So we helped to form a coalition with the Brown Berets coming out of Southern California. And what about the Puerto Ricans in Chicago? Cha-Cha Jimenez formed a coalition with Fred Hampton, and we spread to New York. Said the Puerto Ricans lost in the sweatshops of America. And what about the Chinese who built half the railroads of America? So we formed a coalition with the Red Guard. And what about the poor whites? And so we formed a coalition with the Young Patriots coming out of Chicago. And what about women? We said the liberation of women is absolutely a part of our struggle. And we were the only black organization at the time to even say that. And what about gays? And we were the only black organization, matter of fact, the only progressive or revolutionary organization that said we see gay liberation as a part of our struggle. And what about the people that are disabled? What about the people that are disabled and are locked out of everything in America? No opportunity to get a job. We don't even want to see these people. Oh my God, they're ugly, please. Let's close the doors and not look at them. And so we formed a coalition with the Center for Independent Living and fought very hard with Ed Roberts in Berkeley. And we said, then what about older people who are shut out of this society, have no rights and nothing to fight with and nothing. So we helped to form the Gray Panthers organization. And what about our friends in South Africa? So we formed a coalition with the PAC, not to be confused with the ANC. And what about Mozambique? And so we formed a coalition with Frelimo, and in Zimbabwe with ZANU, and in Guinea with PAIGC. And what about our friends who are in Palestine? So we formed a relationship and a coalition, that's right, Palestine, and we formed a relationship and a coalition with the PFLP, don't get it confused, the PFLP, Dr. George Habash. And what about the war that was going on and our comrades in Vietnam? And so we said a victory for the Viet Cong, and we sent ambassadors over there and had coalitions with them, and also in Cuba, and also in Uruguay, and also in other places. So you can see where right away we're in trouble with the government, right? And we said, well, how are we going to organize people to believe in changing something? Because people are afraid. She's got me on minutes. Are you giving me minutes too? Oh, okay. Who's he? The other guy? Okay, she gave me more minutes than you did. So I'm going to wind it up. I'm very conscious of this. I'm winding it up. So what we decided was that in order for us to begin to involve the masses of people, because quoting Mao Zedong, we said only the masses make the revolution, not the revolutionaries, not the vanguard as we called ourselves. And so we said we're going to create these survival programs. It's what we called in communist lingo, heightening the contradictions. And so we said, well, children don't have any food, so we're going to feed them for free. And now thousands and thousands of children are going to be fed. But more importantly, people are going to say, wait a minute, we should have food. Oh, food is a right, a human right. Can you believe that? We still don't get it. We talk about food justice. I don't even know what that is. Food is a basic human right. You got to eat in order to live. If somebody puts a price tag on it and you don't have it, you're dead. So it's a human right that you have food. Human right that you have medical care. So we started free clinics. And people began to surround us and say, oh, we like what the Black Panthers are saying. We like this part about free clothing. We like this part about housing. We like all this stuff. And the government said, wait a minute. The Black Panther Party is the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. And they put everything they had called COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, to destroy the party, to discredit the party, to undermine the party, to malign it and do everything else and in fact kill the party. Ultimately, the party withered away, which wasn't the worst thing because we can talk about that, by 1981. And since then to now, what do we have? So I'm going to finish by saying we have really nothing. We have no opposition to the existing scheme of things. We've had these moments, you know, these Ferguson moments and these Occupy moments. I'm all for them. But right now, there is no opposition because most of us became totally complacent when we thought we had elected a black president. I'm not speaking of Clinton, I'm speaking of Obama. So the question is, where do we want to go from here? But we have to first recognize, as King pointed out, where we are. And I would remind us that we really are living in an oppressed state. Not just black people, but Latinos and brown people and women still talking about equal pay in the United States of America, all of this. So at some point we have to make some decisions, and I hope that these conversations will inspire us to regenerate ourselves toward the ideal of power to the people. Thanks a lot.
Hello? Hi, thank you. That was me. Okay, so we are running out of time, but if there are any, maybe 2 questions, real quick.
It says, what advice to give to young African Americans who want to make, you said positive change? Improvements in the community. Well, just on a note, I would say that I rarely use the term African American, one, because I don't deem myself an American in any way. I'm not going to be a part of all this stuff that's been done to other people and that's being done around the world in the name. I'm not part of that, so I just say black people, which I consider a political statement more than an ethnic statement, because people are like, oh, I'm mixed. Okay, whatever. You like Plessy, you're black. Plessy was black, you're black. So anyway, the bottom line is, if I had an answer to that question, but I do say organize, organize, organize. But you have to be in the community. You can't be out here on the net, and the revolution will not be Twittered or anything else. No matter what they tell you about the Arab Spring and all that fantastical CIA conversation. You have to be in the community doing something that is real. The masses of people must be engaged in this struggle. If you are conscious and you have leadership skills and you have a commitment, then get in the community and let the people know that I've got a project at 7th and Campbell, which we're trying to build a variety of businesses to be cooperatively owned by people coming out the joint and people about to go to the joint. You know, the guy up there selling purses over in front of Walmart, you know, got that purse for you, sister. You know, there's nobody slinging anymore because there ain't no more money in the trap, right? So, somebody can tell me something, I don't know it. But anyway, the bottom line is you got to be in the community. West Oakland, for example, has been completely gentrified. Oakland used to be 50 when the Black Panther Party was in its heyday in Oakland. 51% black, we're down to 23%. Somebody argued with me about it's 24. Okay, whatever. It's a 50% cut. Why? Because we've been removed with bulldozers of the gentrifiers, the developers, and whoever else is involved in it. But the bottom line is the community is now dispersed. Just like in San Francisco, is there a black, what happened to the Fillmore? I went up there, I was like, where is it? Is it the Fillmore? So, you know, we've been removed and erased just about, black people. If you want to really get involved in changing something, you've got to get into the community and be involved in masses of people who are out here struggling, who are the people that a lot of us who think of ourselves as having some sort of superior intellect really don't like. Or people say to me, well, are these formerly incarcerated people you're working with, have they been incarcerated for violent crimes? Yeah. Just like the United States. We ain't been paid for 250 years of slavery, which was 250 years of violent crime. So, you know, the idea, yes, we have to be in the community and doing something, and organizing and staying there and not going off and thinking you can go to a rally and then go back to your class and it's all good. So that's the advice I give. The guy, the young brother back.
The history and the inspiration of what the movement that you've been a part of was really moving. I have a project that I want to share with folks that I want to get your opinion on. A group of us who met in Occupy 3 years ago in Oakland are working on a campaign so the people of Oakland directly decide the budget. So instead of politicians and lobbyists and developers deciding how our city runs, community members will get together in neighborhood assemblies, get information, and ultimately decide public priorities. Real democracy, one person, one vote, instead of $1, one vote. And so I want to get your perspective.
Is Wilson Riles involved in it?
Sorry? Wilson Riles has given us advice and stuff like that. That's great. If you know any other folks who would be interested in this kind of reclaiming democracy campaign in Oakland, please.
Well, you know, we can talk about it later. But you know, I'm not big on the concept of democracy because democracy is a falsehood. You know, if all of us in this room decide we don't like somebody sitting in the room, then is that right? We just go and say, well, we just kill him or her, right? Or just oust him. That's what's been happening to black people in America. Everybody, they voted for slavery. Slavery was okay. So what the majority of people that could vote voted. So now we're voting, but we're still not the majority. So if white people voted as white people and black people voted as black people, we would get screwed every single time because it's not in their interest to worry about our interests, per se. So I don't want to have a debate about it, but I'm just saying, you asked me my opinion. So that's just my superficial, instant response. I think that the only way you get stuff done is that you have to move on it with a serious mindset. Our conversation, a vote, doesn't mean anything. When we, in the Black Panther Party, called for an end to police brutality and murder of black people, we said the only way we believe we can address this is by putting armed self-defense groups in the community, and that is exactly what we did. We didn't ask for no votes. We didn't go to the city council. We didn't care what the city council said. Your city council in Oakland is pathetic. You know, what you got there? Nothing. They had a little town hall meeting. You know, and I like half these people. You know, they're halfway, you know, okay. But let's talk about what have black elected officials done since the Congressional Black Caucus came into being over 40-some years ago. I don't know. I can't see it. So I'm not going to debate you, brother. I'm not going to debate you. I'm responding, and then we'll talk together, okay? So the bottom line is, I don't know that is, but I'm all for anything that's going to undo the existing scheme towards something, an egalitarian scheme where we all have something to say, but participation in the budget is a little bizarre because I might be talking to Dante and he ain't coming and you're not necessarily representing him or you think you are. So with one man, one vote, one man, one voice, you have to start thinking about what does that mean. So we'll talk about what you're doing. I'm happy to have you ask that question, but my position would be that if you want freedom, you're going to have to fight for it. That's what I'm saying.
And now, performing for you live and in the flesh, young, gifted, and black. We used to bite bullets with the pigskin casing. Now we perfect slang like a gang of street masons. Scribe check. Make connects. True pyramid architects. Yeah. Replace the last name with an X. The man's got a God complex, but take the text and change the picture. Watch Muhammad play the messenger like holy Muslim scriptures take orders from only God. Only war when it's jihad. See, Ali appears in Zaire to reconnect 400 years, but we the people, dark but equal, give love to such things, to the man who made the fan. Remember when we were kings?
We used to bite bullets with a pigskin casing. Now we perfect slang like a gang of street masons. Scribe check, make connects, pyramid architects. Replace the last name with the next. The man's got a God complex. Take the text, change the picture. Watch Muhammad play the messenger like holy with the scriptures. Tell us from the God. Only war when it's jihad. See how he appears in Zaire to reconnect 400 years. We the people, dark people, give love to such things. To the man that make a man out when you're king.
God's on fire. Things getting higher. Brand new dollar. Killing for a dollar. You get tired. We're dealing with the liars. From Oakland to Ghana. We need a ghetto messiah. We need a ghetto messiah. We need a ghetto messiah. We are your ghetto messiahs.
It's like a broken record, never meant to be fixed. Only fixing to find our faults, failures, and fatalities, flaunting them in our flustered faces to emphasize our constant dehumanization. A message that black boys will only amount to statistics and ticking time bombs. Birth certificates have become registration for death row. The dismissal of countless murders on TV causes the crime scene to become a stage theater set, where the director's agenda becomes the truth. The manipulation of malleable minds to corrupt the youth so the future becomes a distant memory. You see, this news is not news to me, just a broken record on repeat. Just a broken record on repeat. Just a broken record on repeat. They'll soil our image until it's rotten. It won't be long until their souls are forgotten. So please, don't reduce his life to a 30-second segment to fill up empty space and call it an honor. Don't make him choose between a life sentence and having his life reduced to one sentence.
Put your guns